Captain Aria Vasquez stood at the helm of the Relentless, staring out through the viewport at the endless expanse of stars. It was supposed to be a routine patrol. Another day at the edge of the Andromeda sector, where the Terran Collective's presence had been growing like a wildfire across the galaxy. But as the sharp beep of the proximity alarm sliced through the bridge's silence, Aria's instincts tensed. "Report," she said, her voice calm, betraying nothing of the unease that was creeping up on her. Lieutenant Harrell, her tactical officer, turned from his console. "We're picking up a large fleet on a direct course to our position. They're Arcthurian." Aria's eyes narrowed. The Arcthurians. The most disciplined and ancient of the galactic powers. An entire fleet? That was no coincidence. Not in this sector. She scanned the stars again, and for the first time in weeks, a sense of impending danger prickled the back of her neck. "Distance?" she asked, her fingers hovering over the console controls. 200,000 kilometers and closing fast. "They'll be in range in less than 30 minutes, Harrell answered, his voice sharp with the weight of the situation. Aria straightened. The Arcthurian Dominion had kept to the fringes for months now, watching humanity's rise with wary eyes. But this wasn't an observation. This was a provocation. A declaration of intent. "Put me through to command." The screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Ryder's face. He was a veteran of countless campaigns, his features hardened by years of conflict. His sharp gaze softened only slightly when he saw her. "Captain Vasquez," Ryder's gravelly voice cut through the static. "We just got word of an Arcthurian incursion into the sector. I need you to engage them and hold the line. Do you understand?" "Understood, Admiral," Aria replied crisply. She could hear the weight in his tone. He wasn't giving her a choice. The war had been slowly creeping closer to humanity's doorstep, but it had never felt this immediate. This personal. "Prepare for battle, Captain. We can't afford any surprises," Ryder added before the transmission cut out. "Understood," Aria muttered, turning back to her crew. "Lieutenant Harrell, begin calculations for immediate evasive maneuvers. Get us ready for combat. We'll need to buy time." "Yes, ma'am." Harrell's fingers flew over his console, pulling up a series of data streams. Around them, the bridge came to life. Officers moved with purpose, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their stations. The hum of the ship's engines intensified as the Relentless began to shift, readying itself for what might be a battle that would alter the course of the war. Aria's gaze remained fixed on the viewport. Despite the tension, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The Arcthurians wouldn't send a fleet this large without a clear goal. Were they testing humanity's resolve, or had they made a decision that now required action? Either way, she knew this wasn't going to be easy. "Captain," Harrell called, his voice taut with urgency, "they're locking weapons on us." Aria's heart skipped. She had expected this, but the reality still hit like a punch to the gut. The Arcthurian fleet was moving into position, their advanced targeting systems zeroing in on the Relentless. "Brace for impact," Aria ordered, her calm commanding, even though her pulse quickened. "Divert all power to shields. Communications, get through to the fleet. We need backup, now." "We're being jammed," came the immediate response from Communications Officer Winters. "I can't get a signal out, Captain." A flicker of frustration threatened to break through Aria's resolve, but she pushed it down. No time for that. The Relentless was a symbol of Terran strength, and she would fight to the last breath to protect it. "Deploy drone fighters," she said. "Let's see how the Arcthurians respond to a little surprise." "Drone fighters away," Harrell reported. The ship's launch bays opened, and a swarm of sleek, metallic drones shot into the void. They would be the first line of defense, disrupting enemy targeting and giving the Relentless a moment to recalibrate. Aria turned her attention back to the enemy fleet, watching as they began their approach. A moment of clarity swept over her, and in that instant, she realized the truth: the Arcthurians weren't here for a skirmish. They were here to send a message. They had decided humanity's time had come, and they were ready to eliminate the Terran threat. The Relentless shook violently as the first salvo of energy weapons struck its shields. The force of the impact sent a ripple across the hull, but the shield held strong, a testament to the engineering prowess humanity had developed over the last few decades. "Shields holding," Harold called out, his voice tense but steady. "But we can't take many more hits like that." "Return fire," Aria commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Target their lead ship." The Relentless main guns hummed to life, sending massive pulses of energy toward the approaching fleet. The Arcthurians retaliated almost immediately, their ships moving with precision, evading the blasts as if they had anticipated the strike. But then a massive explosion lit up the dark space as one of the enemy ships took a direct hit. "We got one!" Harold yelled, but there was no triumph in his voice. The damage had been done. The battle had begun in earnest. Aria leaned forward, her eyes scanning the readouts. "Harold, target their command vessel. Take out their leadership. It'll cripple their coordination." The ship shook again, harder this time. Aria's breath hitched, but she didn't flinch. The enemy fleet was closing in fast, their movements synchronized, relentless. "Captain, we can't do this alone," Harold said, his voice tight with the realization they were outnumbered. "We need backup. Now." Aria's jaw clenched. She knew it, but the silence from the fleet was deafening. The war had just taken a deadly turn. There was no going back. "All hands, prepare for close combat," Aria ordered, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Engage the Arcthurian fleet with everything we have." As the battle raged on, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that this would be the moment humanity would either rise to the challenge, or fall to the ashes of their arrogance. "Get ready, everyone," she muttered to herself. "We're in this until the end." The storm had come. And humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were truly made of. The Relentless rocked again, the hull groaning under the stress of incoming fire. Aria Vasquez barely noticed. She was focused entirely on the data streaming across the main tactical display. Each bright red dot that blinked on the screen represented an Arcthurian ship, and each pulse of green from her own guns was a desperate attempt to hold them at bay. "Shields down to 58%, Lieutenant Harold's voice crackled, strained but steady. "We're taking heavy damage, Captain. We won't last much longer like this." Aria's eyes flicked to the status readouts. The ship was holding together, but just barely. The Relentless was built for war, human ingenuity in its finest form. But even the most advanced Terran battleship had its limits. "Get the secondary shields online, full power to forward guns," she ordered, her tone cold. "I want every shot to count." The ship's crew worked with practiced precision, their movements synchronized. Aria could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a violent storm. Her mind raced with tactics and countermeasures, but a gnawing doubt lingered: how long could they hold off the Arcthurians? Harold called out again, his voice more urgent this time. "Captain, the Arcthurian command vessel is advancing. It's trying to flank us. If they succeed, they'll cut us off from the fleet entirely." Aria's grip tightened on the edge of her command chair. "Adjust course. Keep us facing their flagship. Prepare for evasive maneuvers on my mark." A voice from communications interrupted. "Captain, we've lost contact with the fleet. Their comms are jammed." "Damn it," Aria muttered under her breath. Without communication, they were on their own. The cold reality of that hit her hard. Her ship, her crew, and her decisions were all that stood between humanity and a galactic war. "Captain, the enemy flagship is firing," Harold said, his voice flat. A beat later, the ship lurched violently as a barrage of Arcthurian energy blasts pummeled their shields. The force sent shockwaves through the deck. "Brace!" Aria shouted, gripping her console as the floor buckled beneath them. "Shields holding at 38%, Harold reported, though the numbers felt increasingly irrelevant. They were running out of time. Aria's thoughts raced. She knew the Arcthurians weren't here just for a skirmish, they had a clear objective. Their fleets were too precise, too well coordinated. She had seen their battle strategies before, and the pattern was unmistakable. They were here to break humanity's spirit. To show them that their rise in the galaxy would come at a price. We can't hold them off forever, Harold said, looking over at her with a trace of desperation. We don't have to, Aria replied, her mind already on the next phase of the plan. Prepare to launch our drones again. But this time, I want them to target the enemy engines, disrupt their mobility. Understood, Harold said, his fingers flying over his console. Drones launched. As the drone fighters swarmed out, their sleek forms darting toward the enemy, Aria tapped her communicator. All hands, brace for close combat. We're engaging their flagship. Every weapon, every shot, make it count. She could see the flicker of activity on the tactical display. The drones were effective, their swarm movements confusing the Arcthurian targeting systems, but it wouldn't be enough to stop the relentless advance of their fleet. Captain, a voice from engineering crackled through the comms. It was Lieutenant Simmons, his voice strained. We've sustained damage to the port side. The main reactor's taking a hit. We're managing, but if that breach spreads, we might lose power to critical systems. Aria's eyes narrowed. She could almost hear the hum of the ship's failing power grids. She couldn't afford another problem. Redirect all available power to forward shields and weapons. Do it now. Understood, Captain, Simmons replied. The ship shook again, and Aria's jaw clenched. But she couldn't allow herself to show weakness, not now. The Arcthurian flagship loomed larger on the viewport. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Relentless, its dark silhouette outlined against the stars. The enemy ship's weapons fired in quick succession, lancing out like a series of lightning strikes, each blast shaking the Relentless harder than the last. Return fire. Aria commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos of the bridge. The crew obeyed without hesitation, sending a barrage of missiles and energy blasts toward the enemy flagship. The Relentless weapons found their mark, but the Arcthurian ship's shields absorbed the blows without so much as a tremor. The disparity in firepower was becoming painfully clear. Captain, our drones are being wiped out, Harold reported, his face a mask of frustration. They're too well defended. Aria didn't have time to waste on frustration. Redirect our remaining drones to create a distraction. I need a window. The bridge crew scrambled to comply. Harold's hands danced over the controls, and the last remaining drones veered off, creating an intricate dance of erratic movements, trying to buy them precious seconds. Ready forward guns, Aria said, her tone steady as she focused on the task at hand. She studied the Arcthurian flagship's position on the tactical display. It was almost in range now. Almost. Captain, incoming missiles. Harold shouted. The Relentless shuddered as the missiles hit, though the shields absorbed most of the blast. But the impact was enough to send alarms blaring throughout the ship. Report. Aria barked, her heart racing in her chest. Shields holding at 17%, but we've lost forward thrusters, Harold said, his voice rising in urgency. We're drifting, Captain. They're going to close in on us. Aria's mind raced. If they couldn't move, they would be sitting ducks. The enemy would tear them apart without even breaking a sweat. Can we fix the thrusters? Aria asked, her mind already calculating the odds. Not in time, Harold said, shaking his head. The damage is too severe. There was no time left for hesitation. Aria made her decision in an instant. Prepare to abandon forward weapons. Target the flagship's reactor core. I want a direct hit, no matter what it takes, she ordered. Harold looked at her, then at the tactical display. Captain, that's a risky shot. If we miss. We won't miss, Aria cut him off. Do it. Her crew went to work, the precision of their actions a testament to years of training. The Relentless cannons shifted their targeting systems, locking onto the Arcthurian flagship's reactor. The seconds seemed to stretch, each one longer than the last. Firing now, Harold announced. The Relentless guns fired, the immense energy blast shooting out into the void. Time seemed to stop as the bright green beam flew toward the enemy ship. The shot hit dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Arcthurian flagship exploded. The shockwave hit the Relentless like a hammer, throwing the crew off balance. Aria braced herself against her console, but the devastation on the screen was undeniable. The flagship, the heart of the Arcthurian fleet, was gone. Status report. Aria demanded, her breath shallow. Enemy flagship destroyed, Captain, Harold said, awe creeping into his voice. But Aria knew this wasn't over. They had won one battle, but the war was far from decided. The galaxy had just learned a harsh lesson about the cost of underestimating humanity. Get us out of here, Aria said, her voice cold, knowing full well that the true fight was just beginning. The Relentless limped through the empty void, its once pristine hull now marred with scorch marks and jagged scars from the battle. The remains of the Arcthurian flagship still floated in the distance, its shattered fragments slowly drifting into the vast expanse. Though the crew had won the fight, there was no celebration. The atmosphere on the bridge was heavy, thick with the weight of what had just transpired. Aria Vasquez stood at the center of the command deck, staring out at the wreckage. The destruction was undeniable, a symbol of humanity's defiance, but also a warning. The Arcthurians would not forget this. Captain, Harold's voice interrupted her thoughts. He was at his console, eyes scanning the new data pouring in. We've detected a secondary fleet. It's too far to be a direct response to the flagship's destruction, but they're closing in fast. Aria's jaw tightened. The Arcthurians were not ones to forgive. Their discipline was their greatest strength, but it could also be their greatest flaw. They would come back. They had to. How long until they reach us? She asked, turning from the viewport to face her tactical officer. About 2 hours, Captain, Harold replied. We're still crippled from the damage. Shields are at 30%, and propulsion is barely functional. We can't outrun them, Aria muttered, pacing back and forth. What's our current status on repairs? We've got teams working on it, but it'll take time to get the primary engines back online, Lieutenant Simmons answered from his station. He looked tired, his face drawn and pale from hours of non-stop work. We can't rely on our mobility. So we hold here, Aria said with quiet resolve. If they're coming for us, we'll make sure they regret it. The words were more for herself than anyone else. She wasn't sure how much longer the Relentless could hold out, but she wasn't going to let her ship fall without a fight. A flicker of light blinked on her console, and she glanced down to see a message from Admiral Ryder. The words were brief, but the weight they carried was not lost on her, reinforcements on the way. Hold position. You've shown them humanity's resolve. Don't give them anything more to prove. Aria exhaled slowly, grateful for the message, but the knot of worry in her chest only tightened. Reinforcements would take time to arrive, if they arrived at all. For now, it was just her crew, and the broken ship they were trying to keep afloat. All hands, prepare for another engagement, Aria ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her mind. Target the enemy fleet as soon as they come within range. We fight, no matter what. We'll need to improvise, Harold said, his fingers moving swiftly across his console. We don't have the firepower to win this outright. If we're going to stand a chance, we'll need to use the environment. Aria raised an eyebrow. What do you have in mind? We're close to a dense asteroid field, Harold said, pulling up a 3D map of the sector. We can use the asteroids to create a barrier. Our sensors are still functional, so if we set up a series of quick, deliberate moves, we can get the enemy to engage with the field rather than directly with us. Aria considered the plan. It was risky. It was desperate. But right now, she didn't have the luxury of perfect tactics. Prepare to maneuver into the asteroid field. Make sure we can use the terrain to our advantage. Aye, Captain, Harold replied. Captain, Lieutenant Winters, the communications officer, interrupted. We've managed to get a weak signal out to the fleet. It's patchy, but they're acknowledging. They'll try to send backup sooner, but they're not sure when they can make it. Good, Aria said, her voice taut. If they come in time, we'll have a fighting chance. Until then, we hold. She turned her attention back to the viewport, her gaze hard. The Relentless wasn't a warship like the Arcthurian vessels. It was a testament to human ingenuity and grit. And right now, that was all they had. The seconds ticked by. Harold and his crew continued preparing their tactics, inputting the necessary maneuvers and calculating the optimal routes through the asteroid field. On the bridge, the rest of the crew worked quietly, knowing what was at stake. The atmosphere was heavy, but there was no room for fear. We've got incoming, Harold called out. His voice was focused, but there was no mistaking the urgency behind it. They've closed the distance. The Arcthurian fleet is here. Time to make them regret it, Aria muttered under her breath, then turned to her crew. Engage evasive maneuvers, full speed toward the asteroid field. The ship lurched forward as the Relentless lurched toward the dense cluster of rocks. The crew worked with a fierce efficiency born of necessity. Harold guided them with a steady hand, making the ship weave and dodge in ways that were barely possible with their damaged systems. Shields holding at 22%, Harold reported, sweat beading on his forehead. We've made it into the field. The asteroids are disrupting their targeting systems. We have a moment. Keep them off us for as long as you can, Aria said, voice tight with determination. We need to slow them down. We can't let them get a clean shot. The Relentless dove into the asteroid field, the ship's movements becoming more erratic as they weaved between massive, jagged rocks. The crew barely had time to brace themselves before the ship rocked again, this time from an enemy missile that came too close to the asteroid field. The explosion was deafening, and the Relentless shuddered under the impact. Report! Aria shouted. Shields down to 14%, Captain, Harold said, his voice now clipped. Hull integrity is weakening. We're not going to survive much longer if they keep landing shots like that. Aria's mind raced, her heart pounding. They were running out of options, but she wasn't ready to give up. Set course for the densest part of the field. Get us into a blind spot. Full power to evasive thrusters. The ship banked sharply to the left, ducking behind a massive asteroid. The crew held their breath, praying the Arcthurians wouldn't be able to track them through the field. Targeting systems offline, Harold muttered. We can't target their ships directly anymore. Then we'll hit them where it hurts, Aria said with a cold edge. Prepare the last of our drones. We're going for their rear shields. We'll make them pay for underestimating us. Drones deployed, Harold said. They're targeting the rear shield array now. It'll be a hard hit, but it might do the trick. Aria watched the screen, her pulse quickening. The last of their drones darted toward the enemy ships, using the cover of the asteroid field to approach unnoticed. For a moment, there was nothing, only the silence of space. Then, the enemy ships erupted in explosions. The drones had found their mark. Direct hit, Harold said, his voice barely a whisper. Rear shields down. Aria's lips curled into a grim smile. Now we strike. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The Relentless still had a chance. Humanity had survived the first wave of this war, and Aria wasn't about to let it end here. Engage, Aria said. The battle for Andromeda was far from over.